Right, in P.5, we're going to go through solving quadratic equations, and we've done this some with the summer packet. We've certainly used quadratic formula we solve by factoring. But then we're also going to review completing the squares, so a couple different things in here. So remember, quadratic equation is any equation that's in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A, B, and C, they're going to just be real numbers. They don't have to be integer values there. They could be fractions or decimals because they're not those capital letters there. And the A value can't be 0 because then it wouldn't be a quadratic. So quadratic equations are all going to have two solutions because the degree for the polynomial is 2. So you have two solutions. Those solutions might be real numbers. They might be imaginary numbers. You might have that double root that we talked about where the parabola just touches the x-axis and bounces back off. Zero product property, we've used this sum as well. That's if you're multiplying two factors together and you get 0. That means in order for these two to multiply together and give you 0, either that first factor is 0 or that second factor is 0. And the two x values where that would occur would be when x is, positive 2 or negative 3. So zero product property. You can only set it equal to 0. It can't be equal to some other random value there. All right, let me slide this up some. So ways to go through and solve this. If you can factor, you can solve by factoring. That's usually the easiest way, the fastest way to go through and solve a quadratic. It doesn't always work, and if it doesn't work, then you got to try something else there. So if you put this in your calculator, I'm going to assume that you can type this equation into your y equals and go through and solve that. Your equation, your graph is going to look like this over here. And we're looking to see where does it cross the x-axis there. Well, you can change your window. You can see what they have for their window here. Or you can change your window to what you want it to be there. You can find the zeros using that second key and the calculate key on your calculator there and come up with those zeros. You can also solve this by factoring, and let me see if this will stay calibrated for me here. So if 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0, if I go through and factor that, it'll factor into 2x and x, and I think a 1 and a 2, and then let's see, how about a minus with that 2 and a plus with that 1. If we set each of these factors equal to 0, 2x plus 1 equals 0, so x would be negative 1/2, or x minus 2 equals 0, so x is 2. And if you look at the graph, that's actually where these 2 points are, where the parabola is crossing the x-axis there. So that's when the numbers work out really nice for you there, that you have nice rational numbers for your answers there. Sometimes what will happen is the equation may not be in that ax squared plus bx plus c form. It might actually already be factored some for you, which is nice, because if it's in that form, you can just go through and start solving this algebraically here. All right, so I want x by itself. So if you think of your order of operations, you want to get rid of that exponent first to get rid of the square. You can take the square root of both sides. And if I put a square root into the problem, I also need a plus and a minus in the problem there. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with just the number that's underneath the radical there, 2x minus 1. Square root of 9 is going to give me 3, but it's plus and minus 3. And then if I add 1 to both sides, I'll have 2x equals 1 plus or minus 3. Now plus 3 would be 4. And minus 3, minus 1 would, 1 minus 3 would be negative 2. Try writing this again. So you would get x is positive 2, or x is negative 1. So that way you could solve algebraically. You didn't have to multiply it all out and then set it equal to 0. You could if you wanted to. It's more work, though. So let's look at this completing the square, and I'm going to try to recalibrate this real quick so that maybe this will stay on. So completing the square is one way that you can go through and solve a quadratic equation that maybe it doesn't factor, maybe it factors but you just didn't see how it's going to factor. So completing the square, what it is you end up rearranging this original equation, this ax squared plus bx plus c. You rearrange that, and you can get it in that form of the problem that we just solved there. So I'm going to go through, this is how your book sort of explains it there. I'm going to kind of go through it step by step, what you're actually doing to get those values there. All right. So the first thing you need to do for completing the square is you need to make sure that your x squared is a 1x squared. If it's not a 1x squared, we need to divide by that coefficient to make it a 1x squared. Well, for this example, it is a 1x squared. So I'm all set with that x squared part. The next thing you do is put the constant term on the other side. So I want to get the x squared plus 6x. I'm going to leave that on the left. And I'm going to put that negative 3 on the right. It becomes a positive 3.